I'm having a hard time remembering words. Thinking takes a lot of effort and energy. And all of a sudden, it was like a switch. I could feel the effort fall away and the clarity come into my brain. Well, a warm welcome to you all. This video is about my hormone replacement therapy journey.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I'm JJ. I'm a life coach and I eat mostly meat.
I'm Eric. I'm a novelist and I eat beef, bacon, butter, eggs, and coffee. The end. Yep. Period.
Now, you told me I should talk about this.
Well, we had a comment. Somebody was talking about, they wanted to know about your HRT because you've mentioned it in the past. And we have people who have asked questions about that and some people who are just starting. So we thought we would share what you know.
All right.
And what your experience is.
All right. Well, I'm going back in time a little way.
Okay.
15-year-old JJ.
We're going back.
Now, when I was about 15 years old, I started suffering from insomnia. Bad insomnia. So I had a hard time going to sleep, and then I would invariably wake up at 2:30 in the morning. And it was pretty chronic. It was pretty much all the time. And that's not really normal for a teenager. Like, teenagers have weird schedules, but the insomnia piece of just not being able to get to sleep or stay asleep was sort of the beginning of my hormonal journey, which is why I'm going back that far.
Okay.
And I suffered from insomnia into our relationship. Do you remember that?
Oh, I remember.
Yeah. So eventually what I did was I was sort of a type A type person. Go figure. High achiever, plus hard worker. My family had that hard work ethic we've talked about. And so it was no surprise that I was kind of high strung when it came to that thing. So I would get up in the middle of the night and do my homework. Then we get together and I'm done with homework, but I owned my dance studio at that time. And
when you're 15?
No, this is later.
Okay.
Time,
all right.
I'm beyond 15
all
now. Right. Normal, went through high school, went through college.
We're in our 20s now.
We're in our 20s. And I own a dance studio. And I'm still having the same type of situation, hard to get to sleep, waking up at 2:30. Your advice at one point, you were like, oh, do you need to write what's on your mind? Yeah, that doesn't work. Believe me, I had tried everything by this point because it's been a decade or so. And you're like, well, if you wake up with choreography on your mind, why don't you just get up out of bed and choreograph? So I was doing that, choreographing for my dance studio in the middle of the night. Made it through my 20s. Again, fairly normal, but this insomnia issue. I hit my 30s, and this is when things start to go awry with the rest of the hormone system. And I start to have issues with fibroids, uterine fibroids. I start to have fibrocystic breasts. I have... what's it called?
A bad attitude?
I have a bad attitude. I don't think it was that bad yet. Oh, I had a miscarriage.
Oh, that was an important one.
That was an important. So I'm showing serious signs of more hormonal imbalance. It's not just insomnia anymore. It's starting to affect my sex hormones. But I'm kind of a tough Midwestern gal, and I muscle through. Everything's good. Now, at this time, I'm going to conventional doctors. And I actually love my OBGYN team, which is a doctor of midwife and an OBGYN. And the OBGYN's taking care of all the surgeries. And I start to feel dead tired. Like, I had my baby, and I never felt like I recovered from her. And it wasn't her fault. She was actually a pretty easy baby. But I was so exhausted. And so I was basically taking 2 naps a day at that time. You were working out of the house, so you didn't know this was happening. And I was going to the dance studio at night. And then I'd come home, and at this point, there was no more insomnia. I was crashing at 9 o'clock. No energy, talking to my doctors about it. And they would tell me, well, you're just in perimenopause. There's nothing we can do. We can put you back on the birth control pill, but there's not really anything we can do to you. And I've got a great team, and still no help in sight. So things get worse and worse. So now I'm not only exhausted, but by the end of my 30s, I'm also experiencing depression. And it just feels like I have no life force whatsoever. I don't have any energy. I don't have any brain power. My brain fog is off the charts by this time. And I don't have a good mood half the time. And it's not about being crabby. It's about feeling numb all the time and being not suicidal, but like, why bother? Like, I feel so bad. Why even bother? And I'm trying to raise with you. I'm trying to be a wife. You were the first to get the short shrift, I think. I didn't have the energy to be a wife. And I was barely having the energy to be a mom at that point. And I've mentioned in the past that I'd take my daughter to the fair and I'd come home and collapse, and then I'd have to rest for like 2-3 days. Now, at first I tried to exercise my way out of it because you got to get those endorphins going, right? It's just exercise. And I found that I would flatline even more if I tried to exercise. Even like low intensity exercise was laying me out. So I go to Jimmy John's one day in Lake Geneva. And I'm waiting for my sandwich. And all of a sudden, if you are liking this video or any of our videos, please like, comment, subscribe. It really does help. You would not believe. If you don't get those interactions, YouTube shuts you down.
Hard.
And I'm waiting for my sandwich. And all of a sudden, they've got that community bulletin board where they post like plays and rummage sales and you need a babysitter, tear off this tab. And I'm standing there waiting for my sandwich, and a card falls off of the board, and I'm a good citizen, so I go to grab it and put it back up, and it's a naturopath. And this naturopath had just opened an office in Lake Geneva. Now, I'm about 39 at this point. There are no naturopaths in a small town. This is unheard of. There are barely any naturopaths in the big city of Milwaukee. So I grab it and I pocket it and I end up calling the naturopath. And I give them my symptoms. And finally, someone listens and isn't like, oh, it's just perimenopause. Because I'm going, how do people survive like this? How do women make it through this part of their life? I can't function for a full day. If I had to work outside the home more than my few hours at the dance studio, I would have been shot. So contact the naturopath, and they start doing all the testing that naturopaths do. And that's when I find out I have a gluten issue, which is tied to my hormones. But this is where I also learn about the hormonal cascade. Now, I'm not a doctor or a scientist, so I cannot by rote explain the hormonal cascade to you. But what I realize is that it ties back to that insomnia. Like cortisol is one of the hormones at the top of the pyramid. And all of my, I'll just call them hormonal resources, had been shunted to cortisol for so many years that my sex hormones started to suffer. And eventually my adrenals started to burn out. They weren't able to produce the high amounts that they needed. And so by this time, I was like in stage 4 adrenal fatigue. I know some people don't agree with adrenal fatigue, but all I can tell you is I had very little life force at all. So the naturopath puts me on takes me off gluten, which made a difference right away because I wasn't poisoning myself. So my cortisol wasn't having to deal with that stressor, at least, that I was consuming in mass quantities every day of my life. So they do that, and they put me on a year-long healing protocol. Remember the cleanse with the garlic?
Oh, the garlic. That did more damage to our marriage than almost anything else.
Pretty much. I was cleansing heavy metals. I mean, there was a whole list that took a whole year. But I was feeling much better. And I know I started this because I turned 40. This year of healing was when I turned 40. And I felt so much better. And I was also taking supplements like DHEA. And I don't have my whole list of supplements at that time. But they were supplements to bolster my hormonal system, including my sex hormones. So I felt like I was doing much better. But as I've mentioned in videos in the past, I was propping myself up with all these supplements. And it was tenuous. If I did overexert myself, I would still experience a period of fatigue, but I wasn't walking around like that all the time. And I was still experiencing periods of depression, off and on. But again, the 40s, way better than the 30s when I was having all those medical hormone issues and I was having these, just the energy, no life force, or very little. So I'm doing pretty well in my 40s. And then I hit this period in 2017. So I would have been 46, just about to turn 46. And I have my longest period of depression yet, which was 5 months for me. Now, let me say that at this point, too, I've become a life coach already. I'd been a life coach for a little while at that point. So I had done so much mindset work to try to remedy these moods and these issues that I knew were connected to my hormones because of this hormonal cascade. And I knew were connected to food in a way because I knew that when I gave up gluten, I had such a big benefit. And we done paleo on and off during that time. But this period of depression lasted 5 months. I did some mindset work and I pulled out of it. I think I just rested a lot and I eventually naturally pulled out of it. But at the end of that year, I had a weight gain. And I've mentioned in the past in these videos, whenever I have a rapid 15-pound weight gain in a few weeks, I know it's hormonal. And it's because ever since I started seeing that naturopath, funny, that naturopath was only in our small town for about a year and then moved off to the big city of Chicago. But I was able to find other sort of functional medicine people in the big city of Milwaukee. And so by this time, I knew that if I had this weight spiked so quickly, something was wrong hormonally. And at this point, I'm 46 years old, and I'm like, you know what? This might really be, for real, perimenopause. So I remember talking to you. I sought out a hormone replacement therapy doctor. They were still really hard to come by in our area of the country, but there was a chain. I'm not going to say the name of the chain, but there was a chain that had a clinic in Milwaukee. And so I remember it was December 26th that year. I was desperate.
The day after Christmas.
The day I made an appointment and they were able to get me in the day after Christmas. And again, I wasn't in depression, but I was propping myself up and I could see that cliff. I could feel my energy, that life force draining. And I'd had that weight gain and I knew that my supplementation was no longer helping. Now, you also remember I had been doing a lot of research on hormone replacement therapy through Suzanne Summers.
Mm-hmm. I remember you reading all the Suzanne Summer books.
I did, and I can't remember how I got onto her. If maybe there was a book in one of my doctor's offices or something. I really don't know how.
I think you probably saw her interviewed about it on TV.
Maybe.
Because she was always doing the rounds about her new books.
Yeah.
I think you probably saw her on TV. And then we're like, there might be something to it.
Yeah, and she was really cutting edge with a lot of medical things, starting with hormone replacement therapy. So I read her books. I did my research as best I could, made an appointment with this chain, got in on December 26th. And now it's a hormone replacement firm. So I do believe I was ready for hormone replacement therapy, but they're also going to tell you you're ready for hormone replacement therapy.
That's like when I went to basic LASIK. Oh, your eyes need it bad. I'm like, wait, I just came in the door. Would you like to get your eyes under a laser? I guess.
Yeah. No. Now, I know you were skeptical.
I was extremely skeptical because I had been indoctrinated in it's going to give you cancer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which turned out to be flat false.
It did turn out to be flat false. And my mom was really skeptical as well, understandably so. But I knew that I couldn't, I mean, it's like with our carnivore journey. I knew I couldn't go back to having such low energy, such low mood, such high amounts of brain fog. Like, that's not an option at all. And so again, I'd done my research, and the best I could tell, it was a good gamble. And I started my hormone replacement therapy. And just like giving up gluten, I knew it seemed to help me pretty quickly. I got away from that cliff. And I have not suffered any depression since then, or any super low energy. Now, I still was on a ton of supplements that were propping me up. And I know this now because I've done carnivore, which I'll get into in a moment. Now, what I learned with this chain anyway, and I'm guessing it might be true of other chains, is that the practitioners, whether they're doctors or nurses, they tend to come and go. It's a bit of a revolving door. So I started out with a really good practitioner, and then she left. And I was literally I swear they put the receptionist in just about at one. No, I'm not kidding. They were having such problems with staffing. And I started to see that cliff again, that life force cliff. Things were not right.
And you needed prescriptions refilled.
I did eventually, yes.
And sometimes it was a question of whether you could actually see somebody in time.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And so I finally had another. Now, what happened when I started hormone replacement therapy with my weight? Let me go back to that for a moment. Is that I would lose that 15 pounds. So I was still overweight. I was running around in my 140s. So I was still overweight for my height of 5'3 3/4. So I was overweight, but that 15 pounds would go away once my hormones were balanced and a lot of the inflammation. So I suddenly had that 15-pound gain again. And they were not addressing it at this. They just would look at my labs and go, "You're within range, you're fine." And I'm like, no. I see the cliff. I gained 15 pounds in 3 weeks. There's a problem here. So then I went on a search for another doctor. And lo and behold, the practitioner at the place that I liked had opened her own place. So I'm like, okay, I'll go to her. Dun, dun, dun. We need a sound effect here. 2020 hits. She opens her office at the beginning of 2020. Her office, she is not able to staff her office. And she is not, while she might be good at the hormonal part, she is not good at the office part.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where things really fell through the cracks with prescriptions, with everything. And so I had to leave. I hung on with her as long as I could out of loyalty, and I just couldn't stay with her. So I started searching again. And I ended up at another chain. But this one was a little more expansive than the other one. But this time I researched the doctor, not the chain branch, but the doctor. Phenomenal reviews he got. Like, people said they were ticked with the chain, but the doctor was phenomenal. So I made an appointment with him in 2021. We just celebrated our 3-year anniversary. He is amazing, and he broke away from that chain and created his own office now. So he's even more well-versed in integrative medicine, basically. It's Great Lakes Integrative, and he's phenomenal. He monitored me and my blood every 3 months to make sure we were on the right track and tweaking things. And then once things got stabilized, we do a 2-time-a-year blood draw and other testing to make sure things are on track. But he also immediately introduced me to intermittent fasting. And I talk about that all in my journey, my carnivore journey, where I talk about insulin. He started addressing my insulin resistance. He suggested going back to a whole foods paleo diet, which I started to move toward, but then quickly shifted, well, about a year later, shifted into carnivore. But he is phenomenal. He has my hormones dialed in. Now, I'll talk about my carnivore journey in a minute. One of the things he checks, though, is it hemoglobin? I get that confused with hematocrit. He checks both.
Yeah.
But hemoglobin. And one of the ways he would tell if my levels were off was if my hemoglobin was going too high. And I know we had a specific question about this, so that's why I want to address this. I have testosterone pellets, which are implanted about every 14 weeks. The implantation process is not hard at all. It's not painful. It's really quick and painless, fairly painless. So I have that. I take a progesterone capsule at night, and I had not needed estrogen, really. So those were the two things that I was on. And what I noticed, what he could notice is if my testosterone was too high, my hemoglobin would be at about an 18 or a 19, which is high. And blood donation limits are 20. So I was right up against the limit for that. If my hormones are in range, I'm in a 16 or a 17. Now, this is me. I'm not saying this is for you. 16 or 17 with the testosterone. So I get on board with him. And about a year and a half later, I start carnivore. I started intermittent fasting a little less correctly with the clean fast. It was, I started seeing him in July, and I started fasting correctly at the end of March of the following year. And then it was the following October that I started carnivore. And what I've noticed with carnivore is, number one, we have been able to lower my doses of thyroid, my doses of progesterone, and my doses of testosterone. So I feel like my body is buffering and using its hormonal resources correctly. It has the resources from the hormone replacement therapy. It has the resources it needs for the whole cascade of hormones. And we've been able to reduce the supplementation of them. Now, hormone replacement therapy, I know Dr. Barry says this too. He doesn't consider it a medication or a drug. He considers it the therapy portion. It's replacing what you've lost due to aging. And I went into menopause officially in 2020, so I am menopausal. Those systems are shut down. Fertility is shut down. So it's used to replace aging and then the damage we've done to ourselves that may never be healed. But again, I've had some healing. Mm-hmm. So that's been amazing. And as I've said, too, I thought I was doing well on the hormonal replacement therapy in my 40s and even that 50-ish. But carnivore has not only allowed me to reduce those prescriptions, those doses, but its life force is at a whole new level. Mental clarity is at a new level. Energy is at a new level. And my mood is at a whole new level. So if I could go back in time and talk to me, obviously I would have started carnivore decades ago. That wasn't likely to happen. I would have at least told me, hey, when you started paleo back when you gave up gluten, stay on the paleo, girl. Stay on the paleo. Totally would have done that. But to someone who's considering hormone replacement therapy and watching this, I would see what you can do with diet. And at some point, you might need the hormone replacement therapy. Do your own research and make the decision for you. For me, it's been a positive, and I don't have intentions of going off it, especially with this amazing doctor. And make sure you have a good doctor who listens to you.
So You've mentioned Dr. Bright many times
Yes.
in relation to hormones and stuff, because I know she's got books on this for women. How does her teaching factor into it?
Now, interesting, she does not promote hormone replacement therapy at all. At all. Maybe if I'd started years ago with Carnivore, I could see following that route. Maybe someday I'll try to get off it. I don't know. It's too late. I feel like I'm just in such a good place. I don't want to mess with things. But what she does that I really like is she talks about that hormonal cascade in her book. So if you're interested in learning more about it, it's the Good Fat is Good for Women Menopause edition. She probably talks about the cascade in the adolescent version too, but I'm not sure. So she talks about that whole cascade and talks about how it starts with cortisol and the adrenals. And that is what I learned all those years ago. And the title of the book is Good Fat. Eat the fat. Eat lots of fat. So she promotes, for healing purposes, an 80% fat diet, 20% protein to really nourish your hormones and especially your adrenals. So even then, if I could go back in time and say, okay, do a lower carb paleo, but man, girl, you got to up that fat big time. That would have probably allowed me to be a little farther from the cliff, maybe not experience the symptoms as badly, maybe supplement less, maybe start hormone replacement therapy later. But that's pretty much where she sits. Oh, and iodine. She's a big iodine proponent. I forgot to mention, I think I did. My thyroid dosage went down. I'm also hypothyroid, like almost every woman I've ever talked to these days is hypothyroid. So support your adrenals with fat, support your thyroid with iodine.
So Dr. Bright's emphasis on fat aligns perfectly with Dr. Kiltz's fertility philosophy on eat lots of fat for fertility.
Yeah.
So it's all about getting fat in for hormone. My mom always called it hormone.
Yeah.
I don't know why she called it hormone.
No, because she's Southern. Nisha calls it hormone.
Oh, does she?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a Southern thing.
It's a Southern thing?
Yeah.
It always sounded more negative when you say hormone than hormone. But anyway, Dr. Kiltz's whole thing is just eat lots of fat.
Yes.
Because that will help for fertility.
Yeah. So they are very aligned in that. And obviously cut out the inflammation. Both of them you're not eating inflammatory foods plus the fat.
And you do eat a lot of fat.
I do. I as I've mentioned, I did not start out for the first year and a half of my carnivore journey. I did not track macros at all, but I did add butter to steak. I toyed with eating some butter every now and again, but this year I have actually upped the fat even more to where I am getting fat trimmings from the butcher, and it's good. It's good.
I remember you telling a story about before Carnivore, you had gone onto your HRT and you were at an event in California or something when you said your brain turned on.
I forgot about that.
What was that all about?
It was, and it was right after, I think it was right after the first thing.
So how many weeks later?
That's a good question, isn't it?
Well, you don't have to figure it out, but it was.
I don't know.
It was within weeks, not months and months and months.
I'm guessing it was probably in January because we often have an event.
What was the experience?
So I was literally in workshop. I'm a life coach at this point, and I literally went from, it's like the Wizard of Oz, where everything was in black and white and it goes to color when she enters Oz. So I'm there and I'm feeling like I have to work really hard to track what's going on in the room. And things are fuzzy. I've got brain fog. So I'm having a hard time remembering words. And thinking takes a lot of effort and energy. And all of a sudden, it was like a switch. I could feel the effort fall away and the clarity come into my brain. And it's not a life coaching thing because I've had those types of insight, clear moments. This was totally a physiological thing where it suddenly seemed like the world was in color. That's all I can say. There was more life. I'll use that term again. That there's more life force. I could think more clearly. I suddenly felt not as fatigued, and the mood elevated a bit. I wasn't just like the struggle lifted.
So some little balance of brain chemistry shifted in that moment.
Yeah.
To flip the switch.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It is crazy.
But it makes sense to me because back when I was carb dependent, you know how I would get at like 11:30 in the morning and I would start to get really low and drowsy as my blood sugar started to go down.
Yes.
And then I would have some carby lunch and it would almost be like I'd had heroin.
Yes.
And I could feel my brain turn back on.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, I feel so much better. I really needed that. And I don't experience that sugar deficit and then that sort of high from the carbs that returns my brain on anymore because I don't eat them. But that's how I can kind of imagine what that was like.
It was incredible. It was incredible. I'm glad you remembered that because I forgot
Well, you
about
used
that.
to tell it all the time, but then carnivore became such a force in our lives that you forgot about the old story.
Yeah, the old story, my brain was probably turned on to whole 60%, but it felt like a miracle. My mother keeps asking me when I'm going to stop.
Because she's concerned about it for your health.
Yeah. She's in her 70s now, and she's had some female things come up, and she's a little more okay with it now. She's hoping that I don't get her some of her issues, and so she's like, well, when are you going off it? Well, maybe it's good you're on it.
I won't say anything.
No, don't say anything. There's nothing to say. There's a little opening there that she's not probably quite as worried about me.
So you went to a couple of chains, but the second time you said you really researched the doctor and reviews on the doctor.
Yes.
So if someone is like, I need to figure this out, I need to find somebody, what should they be looking for in a doctor or the doctor's process?
So I'm going to say he, since my doctor is a he. But looking at those reviews for how well he listens to and responds to the patient and how much time is spent with the patient. We hear that a lot. And if they're moving you through quickly, they are not looking at your blood tests thoroughly. Now, I eventually referred him to you because he's an integrative doctor. He covers all sorts of things now that he's not just with the chain. And I did that because he is so thorough with the testing.
Well, it's holistic.
It's holistic.
He's not looking at just your hormones and then getting you to a target.
Correct.
He looks at an enormous amount of blood panel and urinalysis and body comp. I talked to him about the current theories of like cholesterol and the debate around LDL and ApoB and stuff. I'm heterozygous for the MTHFR. And so
Me too.
I had questions about it and he pulled out a sheet and we walked through like what it means and then why supplementing with a certain kind of B12 helps lower my homocysteine. So, and he would spend a solid hour.
Yes.
I would think the main thing that I would be looking for in that type of doctor is one who's not just interested in getting your hormones to target, but getting a whole entire picture of your metabolic state in blood labs.
Yeah, that's a good, excellent point because that's the same as just looking at your cholesterol.
Yeah, that doesn't tell you anything. Yeah.
This is what do they call, like a concierge doctor? What's that called?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not through our health system. And honestly, I have so many of my friends who've gone through perimenopause and menopause and cannot afford. And it just breaks my heart. I'm like, oh my God.
But I would think now in the age of telemedicine, finding someone who could do something similar be much easier.
I think you're right.
Now, I don't know how it would be in other countries, but in the U.S., you could probably get a prescription for almost anything through a telemedicine doc who's set up just to prescribe it. But that's not necessarily a good idea. I'm not recommending that. Yeah.
No, I think you're right. And obviously you wouldn't do pellets because that requires an in office visit.
Well, some people might be brave.
All right, let's see. Okay, you want to take the scalpel. I could just see it on Zoom.
My God.
Take the scalpel. Oh, nope. You would be doing my pellets. Can you imagine?
I don't know if I could or not. Maybe I could.
No, but that's a good point. I think there is a lot of hormonal support you can get through Teladoc now. That is very true.
Yeah, and if you're in the UK and you're relying on NHS, or I don't know what happens in Canada, I don't know what you do. I don't know what the answer is, and we'd love in comments to hear what your options are.
Well, I do know one option.
What is it?
Dr. Elizabeth Bright is not going to take you down the hormone replacement therapy road, but she does telemedicine, basically.
Oh, that's right, because she's based in Italy, right?
She's based in Italy. So I've even considered doing a consult with her just because I think it would be interesting. Mm-hmm. I'd like to hear what she says, but I'm not giving up my hormones, doctor. And she's very dry. She would probably be.
She'd think you were crazy because you laugh all the time.
Yeah. But yeah, she would be an option. She would help get your adrenals and your thyroid at least functioning at a better in a better place.
I know I see so often, like in Dr. Barry comments on his videos, people who just can't get their primary doc that's covered in the insurance to even do a full thyroid panel.
Yeah.
I know that it's a real big struggle sometimes to get these tests even done. And then the docs don't even know what to do with it.
Yeah.
And so I don't know how to handle that challenge.
I don't know either. I will say our doctor doesn't take someone till they're 25 years old. I did find another really reasonably priced regional system of clinics that is also sort of outside the system, fairly reasonably priced. So I took my daughter there, not about hormone replacement therapy, but just a clinic that you can pretty much walk in and they're going to work with you. So you can also look for that type of thing. This one's called the doctor's office, but it's literally what it's called. But I think it's only here in southeastern Wisconsin, I believe. Yeah,
they're famous for offering the non-standard of care treatments for certain viral infection.
They do offer that too, yes.
Which I don't know whether it's a good or bad idea, but there's a huge demand for it at times.
I don't know, but I sort of felt him out too felt that office out before I took my daughter.
Yeah, don't be feeling him out.
I didn't feel him out. But what I was looking for, it was basically we were interviewing each other. I got a blood draw there to see how that process went. But he had no issue with me being on Carnivore. He was really letting me be the lead in that. And I was okay with that. Now, in our other case, I wouldn't want to be the lead for hormone replacement therapy.
For what?
I wouldn't want to be the lead, take the lead. In this doctor's office visit, I took the lead. I was like, Here's what I want done. Here are the tests I want done. I am a carnivore. I was driving the bus for that appointment.
Yeah.
Which was good. And I'm sure if I came in with questions, he'd help me. Mm-hmm. But with my hormones, I wouldn't want to be driving the bus.
Yeah, got it.
I want an expert.
Yeah, right. That makes sense.
Not coming in and saying, okay, I think I need some progesterone. I don't think I need estrogen yet. I want the doctor to be able to tell me that.
Okay. So if you've gone down this path and done it, please put comments down there so that other people can see what your results or questions are.
And we'd also like to know, how did you find your doctor? How did you interview your doctor? Give us a little tip in there for people who are reading.